Hi, this is Todd Olthoff from toddolthoff.com coming back at you with another screencast. And this week we're going to take a look at the Xcode service that's built into OS X Server. Now, Xcode allows you to develop applications such as Mac applications or iOS applications that you could then make available to your devices or sell on the Mac App Store or the App Store itself. And so it's a coding language, and OS X Server has a service built into it that allows you to manage your code. And so it comes in handy if you're working with a team of people, because then the Xcode Server will monitor your code. It'll allow multiple people to work on the same code and has services like bots that help you comb through your code to make sure everything's up and running and working okay. And so it really becomes a nice way to collaborate and host all of the different code things that you're working on. Now, I'm not a developer myself, and so this isn't something that I do regularly. I just wanted to put that out there, but I can show you how to set up the service and get it up and running for those of you that do this. And so hopefully this will help you get things in a place where you can use them as a developer. Now, before we get started, you notice here's the service. It's blank. We need to choose Xcode, which means we need to have Xcode set up and running. The other thing we need to have is a developer account. And so let me just show you that here for a minute. So here we are over on Apple's developer website. And so this is the developer program. And so you can enroll in the developer program. It gives you access for $99 a year to all of the different development features, not just for the Mac and not just for iOS or Watch OS, but for all of it. And so that fee will give you all of the connection stuff that you need to be able to distribute your apps, to get access to the betas, and also to track your apps. You can test your apps with TestFlight, gives you analytics, all kinds of good stuff that's included with this, again, for $99 a year. And so I'll show you what it looks like once you get your Xcode server up and running, but you'll need to get a Apple developer license to really make this work and get the most out of it. So the other thing you do once you get your developer license all set up is you go over to the App Store and you'll need to install Xcode. Now, Xcode is free, so it doesn't cost anything to do that, but you need to have an instance of Xcode running on your Mac. And so you can see here I've already got mine set up and ready to go. So let's go ahead and go back into Server. Okay, so now that we've got Xcode downloaded and ready to go, we just click this Choose Xcode, and so it'll take you to your Applications folder where you just scroll down until you hit Xcode here, and then just click on Choose. And so once you do that, it's going to start the process of setting Xcode Server up for you. So here it goes. You can see it's preparing to configure Xcode Server, and it's going to go through a little bit of a process to get that set up and running. And so depending on whatever other things you have running on your machine and all that kind of stuff, your mileage will vary in terms of how long it will take. So I'm going to let this run a little bit, and then I will come back and show you each step of the process. Okay, so we got this SDK that came up. It's just the license agreement, so we need to agree to that. So I'm just going to say agree here. And so it's going to ask me to authenticate. Okay, so once I've authenticated, I'll say OK. And now it's going to say enable access for UI testing. And so it requires permission to have accessibility for that. And so you can click request access to open system preferences and add Xcode. Okay, so we're going to say request access. And again, iTunes needs to be quit. So we're just going to say quit all because I've got iTunes running. So it's going to quit iTunes for me because it needs that. And so now it's going to start installing all of the components that we need for Xcode so that the Xcode server can get up and running. So I'm going to let this run. Like I said, it'll take a little bit of time to do that. And once it's done, I'll show you what it looks like on the other side. Okay, the Xcode app is in the middle of configuring, and we have this Xcode helper would like to control the computer. So let's go ahead and open System Preferences here. And I've got that open, so let's go ahead and put that up here. And so there we go. It's going to take us to security and privacy. And so under accessibility, Xcode wants to have access. So I just need to authenticate here to unlock this and just go ahead and give it permission right there. And so that's all I need. And so now I can lower this, and now Xcode has permission. So it's going through this final configuration process. Again, it's going to take a little bit of time depending on what you've got running in the background. And so I'm going to go ahead and let this run. And when it's done, I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so here we are on our Xcode server, all kind of set up. You can see we've got it registered with Xcode. Now the status is still offline because we haven't made the service live yet. But let me just walk you through a couple of these settings before we do that. First thing is like in all of our different options here in server, we've got permissions. We can edit the permissions as to who can create bots or not, either logged in users, all users, or only some. We can also choose to also allow view-only access for all users, or allow connections from, and we can say all networks, private, or only some networks. So it does give us a little bit more control over a few of these things with Xcode. I'm just going to leave it at the default and say cancel. Now you can see here we've got build using, and we've got our particular build, which is the most current build of Xcode. If I wanted to choose a different version, I would just click on choose Xcode, and it would send me back to my applications folder to find the other build. Now here you've got developer teams, and you can see here I've got this team that I have already set up on the developer program. If I just say edit teams, you see I've got my team here, which I just named myself. If I wanted to add another team, I'd click the plus here, and then it's going to ask me to log in with my Apple ID and password, and then I would have to create another team, or it would try to find the team that I'd created actually on my developer account. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to cancel, but I wanted to show that you can do that, and you set up a team, and then that's how everybody connects. Down here you have your devices, and this is where you would add different development devices and edit them. You connect these devices depending on what you're working on. And then over here we've got our repositories, and this is where you would add Git repositories. You can see here I've got this My App that I had created before as a Git repository. I had done this just in an example. If I go into edit it, I can come in here and edit. Here's where it's located. SSH access, it has that set up on how to get access to it through SSH. And then I've got my HTTPS access, where I can allow logged in users to read and write to that Git repository right there. If I just say cancel, I can show you I can add another one just by doing this. Name it, put these settings together, and it will add another one to the repository. I'm just going to cancel that for right now. But just wanted to show that you could do that. Again, I can edit the repository creators, who they are. Right? Again, this is just mainly permissions. And the same thing with editing repository access. How do I want it accessed? By HTTPS, which again is encrypted web type of deal there, or SSH, which would be through terminal and all that. So I can just kind of choose how I want to access those things. Let's just go back into settings. So let's go ahead and throw the switch to turn on our Xcode server. And again, it's going to ask if I want to allow access to it over the internet, because it's going to open the appropriate ports. I'll just go ahead and say allow to get that set up. You can see that it's starting the server right now. And we're going to wait until that loads. And once it's loaded and up and running, then we'll be able to use it. And then I'll show you a couple of things that we can do with it to kind of set up some of the services. Okay, so here we are. Everything is set and ready to go. You see that the service is on. So let's take a look at a couple of things that we would do in Xcode here. So I've already pulled up Xcode with kind of a sample project. It's a project I got from a website, which I'll put on the screen here, where he does a really good walkthrough on how to set up Xcode and get everything up and running. So those of you that are developers, you want to go and take a look at that. I'm just going to show you a few things here. So here we've got our sample project up and running here. And if I just come up here to Preferences, I've got to connect this project to my server. So I come in here to Accounts. I'm just going to hit this little plus here. And I'm going to add a server. And so your server should show up here. So I'm going to say Next. And it's going to ask for a username and password. So let me put that information in. All right, and I'm just going to say Add. And so now it's added the server in there. It's got me as a registered user. It's put a certificate in. It's got the server as on. And so now I've got the certificate and everything I need to go ahead and run this. Okay, so it's all connected now to the server that I've got set up, and that's going to allow me then to set up and run bots on my server. So I'm going to let it finish its little setup here, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to add bots. Okay, now to create a bot, if you got your Git repository all set up, you just hit Create Bot. And so it'll take you into this different project, what you can name your bot, whatever you want to name it. Choose your server. We'll say next. It's going to verify the source control credentials. And let's just let this go here. And so now you have your project. You can set it up as master or fast lane deploy or whatever. We're just going to leave it as master here and say next. And then it gives us the scheme, right, where we can perform analyze actions, test actions, where we're testing it. The code coverage, I can use the scheme setting or enable or disable. I can perform an archive action, create user installable product, choose when I want to do cleaning. I can do it always, once a day, once a week. I can use the scheme setting or debug or release, depending on how I want to configure the build. I'm just going to leave these at the default and say next. And then I can schedule it periodically, on commit, or manual. And I'll just leave periodically, and it can do it hourly, daily, weekly, or on the hour, or every 15 minutes, or whatever. So I'm just going to say next. And then you can test it with, and you can choose iOS devices. You can say all iOS devices. You can say specific iOS devices, and that allows you to specify which devices you want to test this with. So I'm just going to check it on the iPhone 6 Plus. And just put that on there. But you can set it up however you want. And I'm going to say next. And so I can add different environment variables. If I just click the plus, I can see a name and a value if I want to do that. In my case, I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to say next. And so before integration, I can add a trigger if I want to run a script. After integration, I can run a script or send an email notification that it's done. And I'll just say create, and so it's going to create my bot now. And it says bot was created and it was successful, and I can say done now. And now I've got that bot that's right there, and it'll show me these statistics. And if I just hit integrate here, it will it starts to run these different tests, and it'll come up with error warnings and all of that. You can see the test is running over here. You can see that it's setting everything up there. It's getting the bot ready to go. At any time, I can edit the bot in here. Again, if I hit integrate, it's going to run a test for me to test my code and everything. And you can see right now, it's got that little X there because it's running it right now. And will give me any warnings and all those sorts of things. So like I said, this is just kind of a test thing. It's not anything that that I've put together myself. Like I said, I just got a little test project here to work with. But that gives you an idea of how to set up the bots. So that's about all I can give you here in terms of how to work with Xcode Server. Hopefully that helps you get everything up and running. Like I said, I'm not a developer, so I can only show you some of the things that I've learned about how to set it up. At that point, the rest is up to you. So hopefully that helps you get everything set up and running. Let me just kind of put that down here. So that's all I have for this week. I'll be back at you next week with another screencast to help you learn how to do more things with your Mac. If you're interested in help in setting up your own server, feel free to contact me at todd@toddolthoff.com.